Most people think creativity is something you're born with, but it's not. So if you're struggling with trying to be creative, you just have to use my proven creativity formula. I've spent over 20 years working in the creative field, and this 7-step creativity formula has helped me have the most creative ideas every time. So let's dive in. Step 1 in the creativity formula is to use the recombination strategy. Let's hear it from them and compare these two quotes. So first up, Hemingway once said, "There's no such thing as an original idea." That was a modernist thought. The second one is from Steve Jobs. Creativity is in the problem solving, not in the pixels or the colors or the layout, in how you combine what you know to solve what's in front of you. So can you tell what both of these phrases have in common? They both relate to the idea of recombination. This first step is so important because you have to come to terms with the fact that real creativity isn't invention. It's taking pieces from completely different walks of life and combining them into something that feels new and can solve a creative problem. The reason most people struggle to be creative is that they're chasing this idea of originality instead of recombination. Besides, creativity is a muscle. Some people seem to be born with like the perfect chiseled abs of creativity, but everybody actually has it. And just like muscles, everybody can build it. When you shift from, I need a brand new idea, to, I need to collect and combine interesting things into a great new idea, that's when the ideas start moving. So stop asking, is this original? And start asking, what can I combine? A quick example I love is the company HelloFresh, actually. They combined two ideas that already existed, grocery shopping and finding recipes, and they turned this into a subscription model that gives people their time back from both of these activities. They, of course, send you pre-portioned ingredients and a recipe with instructions on how to make it. So try this out. Keep a running list of interesting concepts from completely unrelated fields. And the next time you feel stuck, don't look harder at the problem. Think about how you can combine two solutions that already exist that you might not even think of to solve your problem. Step 2 of the formula is called using the black ball. Picture this, a vast dark space with like sparkly lights all over, scattered everywhere. Those are your ideas. They're like floating in every direction with nothing pulling them together. Now, put a small black ball in the center. The moment it's there, those scattered lights stop just sort of drifting and like move toward it. Certain ones come really close to it. They connect, they collide. That black ball is a constraint, and it just did something that total freedom never could. It gave your ideas somewhere to go. So when you're struggling with like all of those ideas that are out there, there's a hard truth. Total freedom as a creative sounds like a dream, but it can actually be paralyzing. When your brain and ideas can go everywhere, they go really nowhere very useful. You have to realize that adding constraint to your task or your ideas is not a limitation. It's that black ball magnet. Now, Steve Jobs would tell his head of design, Sir Johnny Ive, it's not simple enough. With the first iPod, the early prototypes had actually lots of buttons and navigation structures, and Jobs challenged Johnny Ive to flex his creative muscles by removing something or somethings. The constraint was to make it simpler, and the scroll wheel, like it or not, it was iconic, was born. Now, you might have been thinking this whole time that a deadline is actually a good example of a constraint, but it is not. A deadline is just pressure. A good creative constraint is more specific. It's a format, a voice, a weird rule that forces your brain somewhere it's never been. So this could be something like, solve our tagline by writing a haiku first. That's a creative constraint, or write in the voice of Eeyore. So, for your next creative task, add one constraint before you start. In order for the creative formula to work, you have to make sure that your brain has something like to push against. Now we're on to step 3 of the formula. I call it the overlap. You can think of this like broad thinking. Imagine a cardboard box. Everything inside it is what you know, your field, your industry, your skills, your expertise. Most people spend their entire careers just filling that box up. More conferences, more courses, more content about the same thing. The box gets really full. Now imagine dumping out that box to find a new idea, and everything that spills out is old ideas, old skills, old experiences. Dumping out the box never produces anything new. This is called convergent thinking. That's your brain processing with a single source of what it knows. Now, picture a second empty box next to yours. Imagine selecting some of your skills and experiences from the first box, putting them into the second, and when you do, combining your skills and experiences with the emptiness of the new box. Something appears that wasn't in either one all by itself. Add new ideas into that. That's where the creative idea lives, and this is is what's called divergent thinking. Two unrelated worlds colliding and producing something neither could have made on its own. So a great example of this, and there are a lot, but a great example of this is the famous choreographer Twyla Tharp. So she would force herself to study not just dancers, but boxers, pedestrians, ordinary gestures. What she was doing was actively seeking out divergent experiences to help her be more creative with her dance choreography. And she famously said, if you're stuck in your vocabulary, borrow someone else's. The best creative work rarely comes from people who only study their own field. It comes from cross-pollination. The engineer who reads really creative novels, the designer who studies jazz. Creativity lives in the overlap. You can't create an overlap if all your circles are the same circle. Exposure to unrelated fields is not wasted time. It's building circles that will eventually produce something nobody else could have made. So this week, pick up one book, start one podcast, or watch one documentary that has nothing to do with your work, not even adjacent, just completely unrelated. Then the next time you're stuck, go learn something unrelated to the problem. Give your brain 2 circles instead of just one. Step 4 of the formula is to do what I call fix the noticing problem. And this is the most common thing that kills your creativity. If you think about it, you have seen your mother's face, in most cases, your entire life, but your brain stopped noticing it after about 4 encounters because noticing costs energy. Now, this is called repetition suppression, and it's one of the biggest creativity killers because the less you notice things, the less creative you are. So one time, when I worked for a tech company, a consultant came in and asked everyone to describe their mother's face in detail. I mean, eye color, freckles, earrings, and the room went kind of quiet. Everybody knew their hair color, but nobody could do it. We'd all been looking without actually seeing. Now, creative people are not wired differently. They've just trained themselves to stay in the noticing state longer before their brain files something away as familiar. That's the skill to develop. Not seeing more, but holding attention on things for much, much longer. The famous advertising agency, Ogilvy, calls this the go to the factory rule. So if you're stuck writing copy for a kitchen appliance or a bottle of beer, go to the factory. Refamiliarize yourself with the thing that's become maybe uninteresting to you so that you are able to see it with fresh eyes. So you notice it. When you retrain your attention to think like this, you stop walking past interesting things and instead use this as inspiration for being creative. So pick one person you see every single day and commit to finding one new detail about them every time you look at them. The color of their eyes, the shape of their earrings, the way they hold a pen. You can even do this when you're walking down the street or driving. Just look at the billboards, look at the signs, look at the business logos. Instead of just mindlessly gazing and not taking anything in, train your brain to be an active listener and watcher in what it's seeing. Step 5 is one of my favorites. It is the bend, break, blend framework. Everyone knows the Wizard of Oz. There's the Wicked Witch. She's evil, she dies, everyone cheers. That's the story that we accepted at face value for decades. But one day, someone asked, what if we didn't accept this? They bent, broke, and blended the story. The bend. What if we looked at this from the witch's perspective instead of Dorothy's? The break. Who actually decided she was wicked? And why did we just accept that? And the blend. What if this isn't a story about good defeating evil at all, but about 2 women and who gets to define goodness? Now, that's Wicked. 22 years on Broadway and $1.2 billion at the box office. Built entirely on someone else's material. Most people accept the premise of every problem that we're handed. The creative brief says X, so do X. The category always does Y, so let's do Y. Bend, break, blend is the practice of refusing the premise, not to be difficult, but because the most interesting answer is almost never inside the original circle. And this is where everything you've collected from the previous steps pays off. The weirder and wider your inputs, the more unexpected your blends. So, take one industry truth, something everyone accepts as the way that things are done, and run it through. Bend the perspective, break the assumption. Blend it with something it's never been combined with before. You don't have to publish the answer. This is just an exercise. Do the exercise. And now here is where it gets interesting, because the next step looks like quitting. Step 6 is called creative surface area, and it's what separates people who are consistently creative from people who are only creative sometimes. A friend of mine who runs marketing for a major tech company told me about a creative director she had hired years ago. Now, she still talks about this woman's work like it was something she'd never seen before or since even. And when I asked what made her different, the first thing she mentioned wasn't actually her portfolio, wasn't her ideas even. It was her costume. Prada, black turtleneck, cigarette pants, black loafers. She looked like a creative director. She wore these every single day because it was a signal to her own brain, I am in creative mode now. She was intentionally attempting to be creative every day, not waiting until she felt like it. She wore the costume to prove it. Now, that's part of what creative surface area is. The more you intentionally attempt to be creative every day, the easier it becomes. I like to increase my creative surface area by showing up in a creative writing Slack group 3 times a week, by reading a new novel by a new author every month, in addition to other novels, of course, but this has to be new to me, and when I travel for one night. I choose to break that never eat alone rule, which is great, and I eat alone at a Michelin star restaurant. The creativity on the plate will move you to tears and often gives me new ideas. So, block time this week for creative input, not output. A walk, a drive, anything without a podcast or music. When you give your brain the space to be creative, you are creative more often. Step 7 is the overnight method, and it's the most underused tool in the creativity formula. Now, I bet this has happened to you. You wake up at 3 a.m. with the answer to something you've been stuck on for days. Or you step into the shower and suddenly you know exactly how to fix the thing you couldn't crack at your desk. This is not a coincidence. That's your brain finishing the work that it started earlier. Now, here's what's actually happening. When you consciously stop trying to solve a creative problem, your brain keeps going. It takes all the inputs you've fed it, the divergent ideas, the collected stimuli, and the constraints you've been pushing against, and it starts connecting them without your interference. It finds the Venn diagram overlap while you're asleep or running or zoned out in traffic. But you can't just assign a task to your subconscious if you haven't given it the raw material first. So the last step in the creativity formula only works when you've done the collecting, the constraining, the noticing, the bending. The letting go is the last step. It is not the first. Now, most people try to skip straight here. They stare out the window, waiting for inspiration to strike without having done any of the work that makes inspiration possible. That's not the formula. That's just waiting. So tonight, before sleep, give your brain one specific task out loud or even in writing. And it's not be more creative. It's something concrete, like find a way to make this headline surprising, or hey brain, figure out what's wrong with this pitch. Then stop thinking about it. Now, keep a notepad by your bed, because when the 3 a.m. idea comes, you are going to want to write it down. You will not remember it in the morning. Now you have the 7-step formula for generating great creative ideas. But even the best formula fails if your day isn't actually designed for creativity. So watch this next video.